Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson. My guest today is a dear and beautiful and wonderful friend of mine. I could not be prouder of this great lady. She has endured the unendurable. She has survived with her mind, body, and soul, the unsurvivable. We're going to go into some very dark areas, but my goodness, are we also going to bring you into the light in a way that no one else can quite do it? There's no one like the beautiful Cathy O'Brien. Welcome, my dear friend.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Danny. This is so exciting always to be with you and talk with you and to talk with everyone who's listening.
Ah, so lovely to have you. You've been dancing around, doing very many interviews. I've seen you one with our friend Shanti, Aquarius Rising Africa. Hi, Shanti. And her and I, we try. Well, actually, I remember I brought you all together once. It was you, Rachel Vaughan in Australia, who's the main voice for satanic abuse in Australia, Gloria Masters in New Zealand, Max Lowen in America, who was trafficked through the Vatican, who's also speaking at GISIC this year. And we had Shanti and we double hosted so that we could then share on both of our channels. That's what Shanti and I do. Because, like other people, Cathy, I always say to them, please share your channels. Get people on your channels. If you got a big channel, don't be selfish. Get Cathy O'Brien on. It's just like, come on, guys, we want disclosure, or we don't. Now, talking of disclosure, let's start at the beginning of you and I and where we met, because we went to a disclosure conference, didn't we, a few years ago called the Awakening Tour?
Yes, it was so great meeting you in person and getting to spend time with you and be in your presence because you're just such a high vibration and such a joy to talk with. Such a measuring stick discernment of truth that people need these days, and for us to converge, it was like some kind of divine convergence, and that joy has just stayed with me ever since.
Ah, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much. And I feel the same way about you, of course, of course. We'd already been talking, we'd already met, before we met physically. But again, there's nothing like the physical interaction. I forget, we met way before that. And it was funny because one of the things that really made me laugh was I was checking in, it was at the Trump Hotel. Most people that were going to that conference were staying at the Trump Hotel. And I knew that Roseanne Barr is your best friend. And also that she's let people know, like, don't touch me. She's like, don't hug me, don't touch me to the public. So I'm standing at the reception, and her son Jake is standing next to me. He's checking in, I'm checking in. And then I look over and I see you in this embrace with Roseanne. And it is a long embrace. You are hugging long. And I've got really choked up looking at the two of you, thinking, oh my God, how beautiful. You haven't seen each other for a while. You deeply connected. And it was lovely. So I didn't go anywhere near. I just didn't, I just stayed away, while you were having your private moment. Anyway, finished checking in, took my case up to my suite, came back down to the bar, and you were sitting at the bar. Roseanne sitting next to you. You guys have got a glass of wine going, a glass of red going. And I'll never forget walking over. And the first, because I'm clairvoyant and I'm clairaudient, the first thing, and Roseanne's looking at me and she's going, fuck off, fuck off, fuck off. I wanted to laugh so much and share that. It was like, Roseanne, you're good. I know you don't want to be touched. Then obviously I got to hug you. That was so funny. But she was absolutely brilliant. And obviously, as you know, I invited her through you to be a speaker at GISIC. And people might not quite understand how clever, how brilliant Roseanne's mind is. Can we just share a little bit on her and her just the depth of the woman is incredible, isn't it?
It really is. That's why we're such good friends. We met at a Hollywood expose of the child sex trafficking all the way back in 2008. That was a long time ago. That I didn't. We hadn't met or knew each other at all until then, and it was one of those, cosmic convergences. Like, wow, we shared so much because we were talking about MK Ultra, healing from it. We were talking about the child sex trafficking way before anybody knew that was going on in Hollywood, and we were really coming up with the solutions for it. And the fact that no matter what happens to us in life isn't who we are. Who we are is still within, and we have this ability, this divine protection over the essence of our being that we can reclaim. We can reclaim our innocence. And we knew that's something deep she and I shared, is to know that these children can heal. They need to be in a safe place. They need people to open their eyes and realize this kind of abuse is going on. Give them a safe place to be, and they'll be able to heal and reclaim their innocence, claim their ability to align with their divine within, to be able to gather that strength of human spirit and infinite power of love and live life the way that it's intended to be lived. So we were speaking out on a very dark subject with the solution, not only something that we knew in our minds, but something we knew in our beings from experience. So that was a real important convergence, and it's one that we've continued to share through the years and make a positive difference for other survivors' sake, for the children's sake, for bringing powerful truth to light on the reality that many people are just now opening their eyes to see and embrace. But we've been talking about it all these years.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. And one of the reasons why I wanted her to speak at GISIC is because that for me, the piece of the puzzle that's missing amongst full disclosure on all the different levels of government, military, the ETs, the technology that's held back from humanity, the infiltration of the school system, education, health, science, everything. The truth about Israel, the truth about the Jewish people, the truth about who and what and where and how. And I've never heard anyone thus far speak so eloquently and brilliantly and bring all of the facts together. So I feel like Roseanne Barr is a literal missing piece of information. And I even said to you, like when I messaged you and said, please invite her, to speak. But she's filming that weekend. She has a new show, so the timing doesn't work out. I said, I don't care if she walks on stage with a glass of wine and a fag in her hand. I don't care because that's just who she is, right? And again, people like that, people that just are who they be, they don't need to impress. They really don't. And that's, and it can be challenging for some people. It's like when you and I met, we were traveling around with our friend Sasha Stone, and he was a humanitarian. And I loved watching how in reverence Sasha Stone is to you. When he's in your presence, he is very much in kind, supportive resonance to you. And that was lovely to watch. And another funny moment we had, it was you, me, Roseanne Barr, Mel K, Joanne, who was Sasha Stone's assistant. We all went outside. We were all outside, smoking a fag, having a glass of wine, and Sasha came over and hadn't met Roseanne before, so I saw that too. And he kind of knelt down and was very, very sweet. And he is a very loving, very beautiful, in certain environments, very gracious person, isn't he?
Yes, there's so many good people in the world right now who are living their purpose, who are bringing their piece of the puzzle to the table, who are bringing, truth to light. And it's so good to meet with that many like minds who are living their purpose, who are shining that light. And the magnitude of conversation, the big picture that comes into focus, is such a beautiful thing. And Sasha definitely brings a vibrational light to the table that only he can bring. Roseanne certainly brings her own unique vibe. We've all got that. And that's what's so important for people to know. We don't have to parrot each other's story. We don't have to share the same experience. We don't have to judge other people based on what we know, because there's so much more out there to embrace. And when you get that many people who are already living truth, who have that discernment of truth, who know what that truth, and know what their truth is. It's so powerful, and the vibration is so high. It's um it's something I'm very much looking forward to at this conference, because I feel like that's going to be one of those convergences of exactly that. Everyone bringing their piece of the puzzle to the table, and when they're different pieces, instead of everybody bringing that same piece of the puzzle to the table, you get all the different pieces. Wow, what a view we get.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I know I was going through with you before we hit record here, the speakers at the Galactic Spiritual Informers, of which you're one. And I was just saying to you, I'm so proud that, you're speaking this year, and you bring such an intelligent, massively important, brilliant, horrific, horrendous, devastatingly upsetting piece of information, where we want to smash the glass ceiling on people's perception of who they think is good in the world, who they, believe is a good leader or someone that cares for them. Because we'll go a little bit now into your beginning of life, and you eventually being trafficked into the White House and the Pentagon. For those that have never met you before, please share some information on that for us, my love.
Well, I've been speaking out for over 35 years on MK Ultra mind control and healing from it. The first 30 years of my life were in MK Ultra mind control as a CIA slave used on a White House Pentagon level. I was deep in the swamp among these perpetrators who steal elections, use drug and human trafficking to fund their globalist agenda, and who are using mind control over the global population to usher in their slave society agenda. And it's so important for people to understand that the formula for mind control is the same, whether it's of an individual, a nation, a classroom, a military, a church, or the world. Trauma is the basis of it. And it was found in the Hitler Himmler research. There's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while the brain is still forming. This information was brought into the United States through Project Paperclip. Everyone can research that for themselves and look into that. When we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the US, with them came the formula for mind control. Knowledge is our defense against mind control. So the knowledge has been suppressed ever since it came here. Right at the same time, the 1947 National Security Act was put into place, and the information on mind control and the formula for mind control was kept in secret societies, like my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge, where all the local politicians and law enforcement hung out. The people who had this key information, who had this secret, were the ones who were placed in positions of authority throughout the community. And that's how these secret societies started working, because they had that information on mind control. We need that information and realize how our brains respond to trauma, that why we're being bombarded with so much trauma is to keep our conscious mind frozen in fright. If our conscious mind is frozen in fright, it leaves our subconscious wide open to being easily led and manipulated. A repetitive media narrative 3 times goes into our subconscious. And if we don't have our conscious mind filter because we're scared, if we don't have that conscious mind filter, that information is just pouring in. The information that goes into our subconscious then drives our conscious thought. It drives our perceptions. Ultimately drives our actions. So we need to be aware of our own mind brain function. But that is so pertinent. It's our birthright information on having a defense against mind control when we understand how our brains work. So that information was buried under national security too. And that was buried for so many generations that many people have forgotten that we have all this power. We have this amazing capacity. Well, our conscious minds have been manipulated for generations. And I know from my experience in MK Ultra that without free thought, there's no free will. With no free will, there's no soul expression. If we lose our soul expression, we lose our discernment of truth. We lose our compassion for each other. We lose our ability to align with the divine within, to gather the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love, to live our life's purpose. So ultimately, the mind control agenda is a spiritual warfare. And it's one that's been going on for generations now. Mind control shuts down neuron pathways in the brain. We need them open. We need to be able to think. We need to be able to think beyond what we're being conditioned to believe, because we're being conditioned very deliberately to keep our vibration low. Our vibration, when it's low, it fits with these perpetrators that I've been around, these high level global leaders, these self appointed, self anointed puppet masters. They feed off of negativity because their vibration is so low. They're a dark, negative energy force, low vibration, and they feed off of low vibration. They feed off of fear. They feed off of hatred. They feed off of division. They feed off of trauma. And they want to keep us in that vibe. Their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit, because it's such a high vibration. They can't touch it. They can't reach it. It's our saving grace. It's the saving grace of humanity. It's where we win and where they lose. Their darkness can't creep in on our light when we remember who we are and why we're here. When we remember that we have all the power, and they only have as much power as we give them or let them steal.
Yeah, it's so each time I hear, each time you start to talk and you start to bring this information to light, which I know is some of the worst information people have literally never heard. And we're going to name some names of some of the leaders that you mentioned that people think, oh, they would never do this. They love me. They love me. I want to remind you guys, as you know, you've seen this book many times. I'm always holding it up on my channel. This is Cathy's book, The Transformation of America. This lists the names, the mechanics, her life story, from having a disgusting scumbag of a father, an inbred, who basically made porn, kiddie porn, as it's sometimes called, and the CIA encouraged him to continue grooming Cathy to awful and higher and more despicable things, and that led to just horrific abuse. And this little girl grew up and was then handled. Can you explain to us a little bit about how the marriages, the fake marriages, because guys, what we're talking about here with Cathy is not just people abused into the White House and the Pentagon at that level, it's every single industry, Hollywood, celebrity. You gotta know that, guys. So, Cathy, you were um, forced into a marriage, but you also had a handler. Can you give us a bit of insight into how that mechanism works, please?
Well, the the sexual abuse that my father was inflicting on me from infancy shut down neuron pathways in my brain. It shut down around the trauma and pushed it deep in my subconscious. I didn't know what he was doing was wrong, but my brain knew. Our brains have this amazing defense mechanism that we need to understand how that happens. And that extended into child pornography. And then it extended into trafficking me to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. So as more and more trauma occurred, more and more neuron pathways shut down until I couldn't think for myself at all. I didn't have conscious thought, and I could only do exactly what I was told to do. The local politician that I was trafficked to since I was a little bitty toddler was Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford went on to become the unelected president of the United States, and he is the one who thrust me into MK Ultra mind control. As his political career escalated, so too did my victimization in MK Ultra until I was used on a White House Pentagon level. Well, Gerald Ford was instrumental in bringing me to the Epstein Island of its time, Mackinac Island, Michigan. That was where all these global politicians met and where they were being covertly filmed for blackmail purposes. And I was used in those blackmail films. We hear about the blackmail videos, and people want to know the list. Well, those videos are comprised of people who would otherwise be innocent that were drugged and compromised with a child in order to blackmail them and hold them by that blackmail. And they're also victims in it, like me. And then there's the victimizers. So we got a lot to understand before we make snap judgments on the videos themselves. We need to know who's holding these videos, for what purposes, who are these blackmailers, why are they doing it. Well, these videos were being made at Mackinac Island, Michigan. And it was at Mackinac Island, Michigan that I was sexually assaulted at the age of 9 by Pierre Trudeau, who was the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, and very much a master of MK Ultra, of individuals and nations and the world, and very much a promoter of the pedophile agenda because the extreme trauma that causes in the mind of a child. So that abuse was horrific. Well, after that, I met who would become my owner in MK Ultra Mind Control, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd held office for over 50 years, and he was always right under the presidency. He had very powerful positions in the U.S. Senate. As my owner since the age of 13, Senator Byrd is the one who directed my activities. He decided who I would be prostituted to and when, what CIA black ops I would be used in, who I would be exposed to. And he also decided who would become my handler in MK Ultra. My first handler was a CIA assassin um, and an occult serial killer, Wayne Cox, who was working in the backwoods of Louisiana. He became my first handler as appointed by Senator Byrd because he wanted me to experience the horrible ritual trauma. It had been found in Hitler Himmler research that after sexual abuse of a child, right up there is ritual abuse, blood trauma, that horrific abuse that comes through that. So I was sent to the backwoods of Louisiana for more trauma. That is how Wayne Cox became my handler. He became my husband. I had to marry him. Um, and that created an illusion that it was just a normal relationship. Nobody looked further, and people didn't. Um, that was absolutely horrific. Then, soon after my daughter Kelly was born, I was transferred to the country music industry where MK Ultra and CIA drug ops were in full swing. The CIA cocaine operations were running through the country music industry, and Senator Byrd wanted me closer to that aspect. Of course, I'm naming Republicans and Democrats both here because there's no party lines on this globalist agenda. So he decided my next handler would be Alex Houston, and Alex Houston became my next husband. So these husbands, these handlers, are appointed by owners in MK Ultra, and they just follow instruction and do what they're told to do to ensure that I would be in key places at specific times to carry out whatever I was told to do.
It's just horrendous. And again, everything you're sharing is in your book for people again to take time to these names. So General Ford, who became a president unelected because they're bought and paid for,
Yeah.
it's decided. Again, people don't have their vote doesn't count for shit. And they got to get over that. they're like, no, my president would never do that. I remember years ago, some beautiful man saying, well, he's my president, so I respect him. I'm like, have a word with yourself. Have a listen to what you're saying. And then and it was funny because this beautiful, he was a gardener, he was a brilliant gardener. He physically kind of went like that, like a physical movement, like when he heard what I said. I'm like, have a word with, why? What if this man's a pedophile? Oh, I'm like, I'm sorry, but there are rumors and there are questions, and I know somebody that was actually hurt by him. So he's like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah. So again, guys, we're deliberately not crushing, just breaking the ceiling on those of you that cannot accept that you're wrong. I was wrong. Cathy's proof of these monsters, and I will believe Cathy till the day I die over any single leader, self-appointed, self-anointed asshole on this planet. Um, let's have a look. Senator Byrd, he was the guy with the teeny tiny micro penis.
Yes.
Had no proper penis, which many of these men you find, you do, and you do find as well, again, just to kind of level this out a bit, that some of the most vicious and violent men, they have little penises, and that's sometimes part of their, you know, unfortunately, like a lot of women, a high number of women have been raped and sexually assaulted, and the two men that did that to me both had extraordinarily little, penises and were very, very violent. So it's interesting. And that man in the book and the way you describe him, he seems to have a slightly more vicious side to him because he's so ill-equipped as a man. As a man. One of the people that you mentioned in the book over and over as one of the absolute biggest monsters on the planet, not just you, but I've heard it in loads of other testimonies, Dick Cheney. Can you share something about this particular vile monster that sits around with his mates, carving up the world? See, people don't believe that. These men, they sit around and they carve up the world between themselves, don't they, Cathy?
They do, and going back to the formula for mind control, trauma being the basis of it, the national trauma that severely traumatized the nation and really, reverberated around the world was the Kennedy assassination. And with the Kennedy assassination, Gerald Ford was the head of the Warren Commission that investigated it and covered it up ultimately, because that was when these globalists took over. This is when this New World Order slave society agenda took a strong hold in the US is in the wake of that trauma. In the wake of that trauma came the electronic voting machines. They were rigged since their inception to place key perpetrators in positions of power and influence until this globalist agenda was moved in. So we're starting to see the infiltration creep in. And when we look at Ford's cabinet, we see he had George Bush Sr. to head the CIA. He had Dick Cheney. He had Donald Rumsfeld, who gave us the aspartame that dumbs us down, that cuts off critical analysis to our thinking. It was one of the very first alterations of our food to starve our brains of nutrients, because if we're starved, we're not thinking properly. Our brains aren't firing properly. And, again, mind control shuts down neuron pathways. We want them open. And all these perpetrators were involved in MK Ultra mind control. He had Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger, you can look it up on the internet and find that Gerald Ford and Henry Kissinger came up with the first depopulation agenda. It's just blatant. It's just right there. He had Nelson Rockefeller. He had, when you see these same perpetrators over and over again, it starts to become clear how we've been manipulated for so long. And then he had Jack Valenti, who was head of the Motion Picture Association of America. Jack Valenti was the one who gave us the term conspiracy theorist for anyone who was questioning the narrative that the media was feeding us of the Kennedy assassination. So it was such a pivotal moment in history. And so many of the perpetrators that I was exposed to were of that high level, before, because of Gerald Ford, and then him being placed in the position of president. He wasn't elected. He was. They didn't even do a rigged election on him. They just stuck him in the office. And with him came all these perpetrators that I became exposed to for the first, really, right up until 1988, when Intelligence Insider Mark Phillips lifted my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. human trafficking swamp. But the brutality and the viciousness that I experienced, the most dangerous game of human hunting, the extreme traumas, the torturous programming that I endured on DARPA, NASA, and military installations was very systematic and extreme. The first handler that I mentioned, Wayne Cox, the occult serial killer, had primed me for who would become my primary programmer in MK Ultra Mind Control. And that was Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, the founder of the occult Temple of Set on U.S. military bases to manipulate the minds of the military through occult trauma. He was my primary programmer. And so I endured all kinds of trauma leading up to the programming, because that, again, that shut down the trauma shut down the neuron pathways and left me wide open to being programmed, manipulated, and easily led. It made me totally robotic by the time it was through. And people like Dick Cheney and George Bush, they were best of friends, very close, very much a part of bringing in what George Bush told us all was their new world order. And the brutality that I experienced through Dick Cheney was extreme. And unlike Byrd, in the little tiny penis, he was on the opposite end of the spectrum and was used to that as extra brutality. But he was absolutely horrific and vile. He was one of the most evil feeling people vibrationally that I've ever been around. His sheer evil of wanting to control people through extreme trauma, his public overt promotion of torture was really all for mind control purposes. He's an absolutely horrific person. George Bush, on the other hand, didn't have that evil sense about him. He had something more, something different. This is, again, these low vibration, dark and negative energy force perpetrators. Some of them, that I met, like George Bush and Hillary Clinton, they have no vibration, not any vibration. They're more inert. There's a completely different feel, like they don't have any humanity about them. They're very different from us. So we've got a full spectrum of dark, negative, low vibration happening here. And whether they were of the evil, dark negative, or of the artificial intelligence kind of, low vibration, the point is the same. They feed off a low vibration. They are low vibration, and they fear the strength of the human spirit and the power of love. Our humanity has been under attack for generations by these perpetrators and more that are named in my 1995 testimony for Congress, Transformation of America. Danny, every bit of that information was validated by clean members of Secret Service, law enforcement, intelligence, so that this information could eventually come forward. Unfortunately, national security was invoked on it by these perpetrators, but the truth has been getting out there anyway. Truth is its own vibration. It's going to get out there, and especially with people like you helping bring it to light. The conferences that you put together, the constant awakening that you do of people. This information is our birthright information that we have a right to know and a need to know, so that we stop following these self-appointed, self-anointed leaders who do not have our best interest in mind. They only have the need to perpetuate their low vibration. And our humanity has suffered as a result of it. It's time for us to, all reclaim it, remember who we are and why we're here, and rise above their imposed darkness.
Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant. I love how you always bring it to a high, but I'm just going to drop it down a few levels because of some of the people that you mentioned again as we're helping people break the illusion, break their own hypnotic freezing. We call it emotional paralysis in therapy for many different reasons when something's happened, but we're so programmed to believe, these are the people and we have to follow them. And the level of, I mean, it's just amazing the torture that you went through. I would like to ask you in a minute to like just lay out for us in black and white some of the torture and the different systems used on you so people can really understand what does that mean. But also, let's talk about that dirty, filthy cow, Hillary Clinton. What a filthy, dirty bitch she is. And lesbian or bisexual, not that I care, but she's just filth, isn't she?
Yeah, I say trisexual. She'll try anything that dominates someone, children, and there's no limit to what to the level of low vibration that she literally feeds off. She's absolutely horrific. We need to see some justice, but so many people end up buying into it because they've been conditioned for generations to look outside themselves to big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult to cult religion to tell them how to live their lives because our birthright information has been suppressed and withheld from us for so long. It's still there, but we need the reminder that it's within us all, that we have all the power because they haven't been conditioned for so long. People still look outside themselves for someone else to tell them how to live their lives. We got to get over that, and stop following the horrific people like the Hillary Clintons and the George Bushes. When you look at my testimony for Congress, Transformation of America was released in 1995. It was almost prophetic in what I knew from inside information, having been around them, who was going to be placed in the office of president until Hillary was to be placed and usher in this slave society agenda. So many people were awake and aware in 2016 that the sheer numbers overrode the rigged electronic algorithm in the voting machine to elect a president who was not Hillary Clinton and a New World Order. There were that many people onto it then. This great awakening has continued to accelerate, but there are still some people who have been so conditioned and dumbed and numbed down to work 9 to 5, 5 to 9 to put food on the table that has no nutritional value while they plug into these devices that are programming them to follow these self-appointed, self-anointed leaders, that there are still many who do need to wake up, who do need to know the truth. And I would recommend that they look into facts like those documented in Transformation of America, arm themselves with truth, research it further. Don't just believe somebody, don't just believe someone or a book. Research it further, cross-reference it, and then you'll know the truth. And when you know the truth, you'll be empowered to reclaim your own life's purpose, to be able to get out in communities and start making a difference right where we live, because it's up to each and every one of us to start doing that and stop following these these leaders we didn't elect.
Yeah, exactly. When people again take time, because people are bloody lazy, you buggers are bloody lazy out there, and then arrogance. So some people will go, well, prove it to me. I'm like, kiss my ass and watch it walk away. Time you did your own bloody work because they're so used to being fed. Here you are, let's not do any work. Little, is it Gen Z, the lazy ones? I can't remember. But anyway, or some older, like, oh, they'd never do that. It's like, get over yourself and your ego. I was wrong, you were wrong. Let's deal with it. Let's move forward. People like you out there, standing strong, living, being the absolute representative of what humanity truly is. This birthright, this soul, this frequency that we come in with, no matter how crushed down it was. And your abuse was from birth, from newborn, and you survived. The 30 years of your life being a sex mule, a trafficked, tortured little girl to young woman, passed around. You'd be physically, sexually passed around the White House, wouldn't you?
Yes, and among drug lords and other world leaders, and used in blackmail ops at places like Bohemian Grove, and the groundwork for the Epstein Island down in the U.S. Virgin Islands under Madeleine Albright, who was head of the Organization of American States back then, and she was laying out the human trafficking operations and the child sex trafficking ops along with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton has often said how much she has followed her favorite mentors, U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd and Madeleine Albright. They were horrible human traffickers that is focused on assaulting children, and being part of those those operations being used in that capacity was torture in itself. To see the depravity of humanity and what was being done to little children, to know that I couldn't protect those children any more than I could protect my own child, any more than I could protect myself, because of the torturous MK Ultra mind control that I was experiencing. The physical tortures that I experienced were nothing compared to the trauma of the knowing inside that my own child was being abused and I couldn't do anything about it. Um, it no matter what they did to me, they couldn't make me one of them. They couldn't make me not have that love spark inside of me, the essence of who I really am that was always divinely protected, and I'm so glad it was, because that I've been able to heal with that and start making a difference. It was love for my daughter that compelled me to heal. It was love for her, the love for all the children, love for humanity, love for them, not bitterness and hatred for the perpetrators. That's their vibration. They're not going to get any more of that from me. My focus is on love. And I'm going to keep speaking out because of what I witnessed, what I experienced, what I saw being done, what the plan is for humanity, for the mind manipulation and the trauma that we're all enduring. It doesn't have to be this way. All we need to do is open our eyes, remember who we are and why we're here, and start living the love we are. It's that simple. It's game over. That's what they fear we're going to remember. And it's time we start realizing that. And it takes truth coming to light for that to happen.
Yeah. I mentioned to you earlier my lovely friend Tony Rodriguez, who you will meet at the next JISC in Charlotte, North Carolina, in just a few short weeks for our next conference. And he was a little boy that was taken by the military into a torture program at a place called Inyokern Airport in California. And how they split the land up is they had part of the land was registered as a regular airport, probably with what's the airline? I forget the abbreviations now. I mean, I used to learn to fly small planes. I should know it off the top of my head, but there's an airline kind of, overarching governing body. But then the section where him and the other little kids were uh, kidnapped, put in this program was called Grill Flame, where they would torture the children to the point of death and bring them back. And sometimes the doctor would break a kid's arm, and they used to stick them in these seats that were hung from the ceiling, put motorcycle helmets on them with electrodes, and zap them while they're watching Disney and horror films and Psycho and all these overlays, and monitor their brain. I mean, for what, for what? But the point I'm making is where the mobile homes were, where the children were incarcerated, that land was registered under a different body. So it wasn't ever kind of picked up. And this is how some of the stupid ways and some of the mechanics that the monsters at the top run programs, military programs, mind control programs, secret space programs, because this kind of bled into a secret space program, and they're very, very real. There's so many ways I want to go. There's so many things I've written down and so many names, but I do want to take a step into, we've mostly heard about Epstein Island, and people think that man is dead. And he was a puppet. He really wasn't very bright. And again, I know someone who physically knew the man. And so I have a first-hand story. And Jeffrey Epstein was a very inept communicator. There was something just wrong with him. He was clearly a sex addict and needed to be relieved several times a day. Such was his intense unwellness. Gielen, and they always say her name wrong. Even her brother Ian was on Piers Morgan this week, and he's saying over and over again, Gielen. It's not Ghislaine, it's not Ghislaine, it's Gielen. And you've got to say the name right sometimes for the vibration to find itself. Again, because everything is energy and there's healing happening. Anyway, I digress. So Gielen was introducing Jeffrey to members of close family and friends, and my friend was there at the table. He was late, they were late, and when he sat at the table, Jeffrey Epstein did not even have eye contact with the people at the table. He was odd, and my friend said it was so uncomfortable. And my friend is absolutely beautiful. She looks like a young Lauren Bacall. She's stunning, graceful, like Princess Grace. She's just so gracious, this lady, my friend. And she said that the whole time, Gielen and Jeffrey especially, was just whispering in her ear. And then occasionally they'd both look at my friend, and then they were like, and she said that she said she felt physically sick. His whole frequency, something so odd, so weird, so wrong, no, with him. So anyway, just I like to share that because we got to understand what these people feel like. You mentioned earlier, we made a note, just
Yeah. Yeah.
their vibe, that you can feel them. They are not normal. They are not right. But so he obviously was paid to organize this honey trap, blackmailing, pedophilic, sacrificial, ritual sacrificing, incinerating children on St. James's Island. And you mentioned before that Mackinac Island, the structure. Can you tell us again, like who set Mackinac Island up? What did the structure look like? Were there temples there to the devil? Like, what did you witness?
Well, there's so many different structures where these perpetrators meet, and they're usually under an illusion because Mackinac Island, Michigan's where the governor's mansion was, and it seemed pretty natural for global leaders to be meeting at the governor's mansion, I guess, when in fact they were meeting to discuss how they could enslave this society for this this mind control agenda. Well, these perpetrators follow a DARPA generated plan. And so artificial intelligence is something they've been following for generations. And that is a low vibration, linear, flat thinking, artificial intelligence. And their low vibration, flat thinking, so it kind of parallels. And again, our saving grace is the strength of the human spirit, because when we have our soul expression, we have wisdom. And like Mark Phillips always said, wisdom outthinks their criminal mind every time. Wisdom is key. Wisdom is what saves us from AI. It's why I'm not scared of AI. It's why I'm not scared of any of them, because we all have this capacity that is so much more beyond their level of thinking. Describing Epstein, that is so classic. It's just such a low vibration, just not anything that we need to fear, because our vibration is just so much more when we realize all that. So these global leaders would meet someplace like that, and do their little evil stuff in secret, and they would go, like, now they look at these self-appointed, self-anointed puppet masters. They chug in their yachts and they fly in their jets to their secret meeting summits, and all this kind of stuff, to discuss the fate of humanity and decide for all of what, and how they're going to manipulate our food, how they're going to genetically alter it and starve us that much more, how they're going to, just the nonsense that they come up with in these places. So it's happening right in front of us under the guise of these global summits that, it's just an illusion. The same way that they meet in places like Disney. The underworld of Disney World is a MK Ultra mind control programming epicenter. It's a DARPA center. It's a high tech mind control center under Disney World. So they have their little illusion on top, but how convenient. They can just extract anybody from on top and bring them down below. It's how they operate. It's all an illusion. And as soon as someone says, oh, Bohemian Grove is the place, they move it over here. Now that they've said Epstein Island, I'm guaranteed there's another one popped up over here, or there's already several around here and here and here, because that's the way it's always been. It doesn't take a specific ritualized structure as much as it takes a place for them to meet under an illusion that the media can't even penetrate. It gives them, the media, their little piece to feed the people, when in fact what's really going on is absolutely horrific.
Horrific on levels that just unthinkable.
Yes.
It's like you and I have said before many times, the main reason why people can't imagine such atrocities and evil is because they would never be that. They can't imagine it,
Right.
not in their psyche. They don't have access to such vileness because they're not made that way. So they tend to think that's not possible, but it is, and it's happening. They used to make you used to get tasered and electrocuted on a constant basis, to the point where you were even expected to sit as a robot and insert a gadget into yourself that would electrocute you, weren't you? And they would stand around laughing.
Yeah, there's no limit to what they would do. They consider people expendable, and here to do their bidding and for their perversion and their control. So there's absolutely no limit to the amount of torture that they would inflict, and feel justified in doing it.
The book, it's so, obviously, and it's worse because I know you. That was the thing, because I know you, because we were already friends before I read it, because I kept putting off, putting off, finally got my big girl trousers. I'm like, who the hell am I not to read your bloody book? But I was worried about what I was going to find and how angry it would make me and how bad I would feel for you, and all the rest of it. And it was so much worse than I could have imagined, again, because we can't imagine the atrocities that these people are, living, breathing monsters, that they are. And again, it is just beyond imagination that you physically survive to be the loving,
Yeah.
born leader that you are now. Now, you mentioned Bohemian Grove. Can you, I know you and I have spoken about this before on another broadcast we've done together on this channel, but as we're here kind of collating everything together, can you tell us your experiences at Bohemian Grove and tell us about the structure of it and the underground of it and all of that, please?
Well, there's a lot of perversion rooms, of course, and they're all filmed. It's more blackmail ops. The owl, where the sacrifices occur that people hear about, are not about religious belief or a worship per se. It's about eliminating MK Ultra mind control slaves who have been exposed to so much. It's just getting rid of them and the secrets um, all at once. So that's what that part's about. And then they have the underground, which is another meeting place and underground in the dark where people like George Bush Sr. would hang out and discuss the fate of humanity. And they would discuss things like um, aliens and how aliens are us in the future, and that it's all about time travel and the technologies that they can bring forward, the kind of and bring back here now, talking about those aspects of things and how laughing at the same time they could create an illusion of an alien invasion while people have no idea the truth, to manipulate the minds of the masses the same way that Satanism can manipulate people. Because if we feel it's beyond our realm to affect, then we're more vulnerable. And if it's aliens, then that's beyond our realm to affect. We feel vulnerable. If it's demonic, it's beyond our realm to affect, and we feel vulnerable. So these are manipulations. The reality is that we have a lot to learn when we look into the whole extraterrestrial aspect of things. We've got so much to explore beyond the trauma that we're fed. There's one MK Ultra mind control program that goes into the lizard theme very deliberately, because that is a primitive fear in the minds of humanity. It was our defense mechanism so early on. When you think about it, we had to defend ourselves against snakes and the reptiles. So we have this natural fear of it, so much so that it's even in the Bible as the serpent, the snake. So this is a natural part of our brain that's been capitalized on by both the satanic and the ET aspect to go into this. And so they would laugh about that there and create, talk about how they would create illusions, what they were going to do next, and laugh about manipulating people by their genetically encoded fear of reptiles. That's just, and they would laugh. It was so cruel. It was so horrific. And those are the kind of things that they sit around and talk about, is how they can terrify humanity.
Wow. So you mentioned that the ritual, because there's, I know Alex Jones years ago infiltrated Bohemian Grove. I think he was one of the
Yes.
first. He got footage out, and there was a terrifying looking ritual going on in front of the owl. Is it Moloch? The owl is Moloch, I think, isn't it? It's not Baal, because Baal is the bisexual male female deity with the horns and the breasts and the finger. Um, I believe. Am I right?
I have such an odd perspective on it, because to me the owl looked like the same one that is the mascot for Yale University, and Yale is where so many of these politicians are conditioned and pulled out of, and the horrific things that happen at Skull and Bones, it's called that for reasons, is absolutely horrific and traumatic, and is another place of extreme conditioning. So to me, the two paralleled, and that owl image has been one that they used a lot, is a uh, symbolic reference to their control that they have over the minds of future politicians through their education and stuff. So I tend to look at it more from that conditioned point of view of my experience, rather than um, which demonic deity that they're supposedly worshiping. It was my experience that even people like Michael Aquino did not worship um, anything outside themselves. They worship the evil within them. They worship the power. They worship the control, the ability to torture and program. That was their their energetic motivator. It wasn't a belief system in something else. It was that they were the ultimate evil. So it, I don't know. It seems like that takes it to the next level of depravity, but nevertheless, that was more along the lines of my experience having been around them.
Yeah, you were around, you were unfortunately harmed by them, and you were there and privy to conversations, and you were then programmed to pass on information. You mentioned Aquino a couple of times. That's one of the scariest, hideous, ugliest looking men I've ever
Yeah.
seen. The picture of it, you can feel something just so empty and monstrous, and he's so weird. Is it the other eyebrows? He's got those freaky, so people know, like. But also, what's disturbing is he actually wrote the Bible, or there's some kind of a religious book that he as a chaplain for the army, for the military. I mean, Dr. Lee Merritt told me that. Have you met her? Have we done a broadcast with her? I can't remember. I know you and I and Dr. Christiane Northrup, we did a beautiful broadcast together. I don't
Yeah.
think Lee was there. Dr. Lee Merritt was the lady that came out of the military. She was president of, she's a naval surgeon, whistleblowing on the jab, and what it was doing to,
Yes.
and also how many soldiers have had to endure the experimental jabs on them that are sometimes also ordered by these New World Order despots. And they just see the military personnel as, well, that's their cattle. I mean, that's the reality, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is. And these are discussions documented in Transformation of America on how they were using the vaccines for that. We need to understand these vaccines are not to benefit us in any way. The big pharma's arrogance of saying that our bodies are imperfect, when in fact we have the most resilient body, mind, and spirit. We have the most amazing immune systems and capacities. We have these abilities that that if we could discuss for hours alone, the amazing healing capacities that we have, Danny, that they're saying, oh no, we're made imperfect. We're so much more perfect than we know. If we haven't remembered so much yet, but instead, they're wanting to do all these jabs, and it's taken us further and further from our humanity and taken us away from the beautiful healing capacities we've been blessed with all along. So it's very evil, very deliberate, openly discussed back when at Bohemian Grove. George Bush was part of it. And it's in, my 1995 testimony, Transformation of America. If national security hadn't been invoked on that testimony, maybe people would have had the necessary information to not comply when mind control masked as a virus was unleashed on the global population. Maybe it would stop these people who think they're going into the military to serve our country to realize that they're serving puppet masters who are willing to use them as guinea pigs for anything big pharma's got up their sleeve. So, we need to have more awareness and realize that they've been laughing at us for generations because we haven't opened our eyes to the reality that we share this planet with very dark, negative energy force vibration perpetrators who are not like us and do not like us.
Absolutely. They hate us when nothing to them they want us dead. And those that will be compliant, they'll use as slaves. And people go, why are they doing it? What do they want it for? Well, it's power, it's greed. And also, this book I've often held up here, this gives you a really good understanding of the mind of a satanic, like you said. And it's good to point out some of them are even beyond the evil of Satan. They themselves just
Yes.
see how evil they can actually be. But this book here is another one that highlights the thinking and the structure. And some of these evils, they don't believe in a God. They don't believe in creation. They don't believe when they die there's a hell or there's a heaven. They don't care. Their ultimate goal is to be as powerful as they can, have everything they can, and when they die, be nothing. They have no desire, and they truly believe they can attain that. So they can do whatever they like and they can attain their end, which is the opposite to God, where the creation continues in a different form, but they can kind of, expire altogether. One big subject you mentioned also, my love, was the country and music industry and the drug, the mules, the trafficking in that environment that you witnessed. One of your false marriages, was it Alex? No, that was the ventriloquist.
Yes.
You didn't
Yeah,
meet.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was him.
Okay. Can you give us a bit of insight into what you know to be true about the country music industry?
The country music industry was so heavily permeated with the CIA's controls and the MK Ultra mind control. They were using harmonics in the music to manipulate vibrations, vibrate neuron pathways in the brain for mind control purposes. And so they had a lot of control through the music industries, not just country music, but obviously, pop and rock and everything else, wherever, any place where they can embed the harmonic vibrations into the music. So the music industry was one that allowed for traveling all over the United States and Canada, Mexico, South America, throughout the Caribbean, everything else. It's a mode of travel where these entertainers could then be used to distribute cocaine, the CIA's cocaine operations. And the country music industry was pretty well infamous for that already anyway. And it got to the point where we hear about Bill Clinton's MENA cocaine operations. That was the groundwork, the epicenter of the CIA's cocaine operations for forever. But the MENA cocaine operations in Arkansas, they found that the if they moved the country music industry to Branson, Missouri, it was closer to Bill Clinton's MENA cocaine operations and closer to their other Epstein Island, the Swiss Villa Amphitheater in Lampe, Missouri. So they were actually took the country music industry and kind of shifted it over that way so they could get even better distribution of the cocaine. And in the meantime, they were using the so-called entertainers and people like myself to mule those drugs and to transport them. So mind control was just heavily used, embedded in the music, and just to allow for this funding mechanism of this dark globalist slave society agenda, the drug and human trafficking across open borders. All that came through and was part of the country music industry.
So shocking. Also, we've never discussed this together before. It's in your book. One of the most, I mentioned it to you earlier, reading the book, obviously it's a hard read, but oh my God. Okay, so guys, it's so well written. It's very small font. It is so packed. And beautiful Mark Phillips, Cathy's husband, this beautiful man, he rescued her. I just found a boarding pass. Like he's on a flight.
My kind
Um,
of markers.
oh my God. So your beautiful husband, who was at the top of American intelligence, he writes the first part of the book, breaking down how American senior intelligence at the highest level works, which is such a fantastic insight that I've never had before. And it's so well written, and he's such a beautiful writer. You can feel him. And then it's your story, your part of the book, and from the beginning. And I told you years ago I was in British television, and there was a studio that were making a program. It was called Edge Media. It was the best television I've ever seen. It's still better than Gaia. It's better than Netflix. It was a groundbreaking TV channel run by my friend Pandora, and she was finding people with extraordinary abilities, truths, military, government, secret space programs, all of what I do and my conferences are about. She was already doing that then. And your video came out with Mark, and it was years ago. I mean, I saw it around, I think it was 2008 or 9. Okay, but I don't know how long your film had already been out. And I didn't even know I'd get to meet you. I mean, obviously, I never stopped thinking about you, and I'm going to tell you one of the main reasons, even though I've told you before. But um, during the video of you and Mark, you explained that you were a complete dead robotic slave. You had no ability to feel, to emote, to, you were just so tortured and broken. And this man, Mark, knew about you and your little girl, Kelly, who was also being traumatized the same way you were. Now you're an adult. This is a little girl, and they're still grown men harming both of you together. Horrendous. He couldn't stand it. He came and he basically rescued you. And I wanted you to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But for me, Cathy, when you shared that he opened you to love, and that love, that power, and this is what you always talk about, and there couldn't be a stronger expression of this, that love that was already there deep inside, it came to being and you woke up, you awakened from your hell. And you said then the power and the spirit, the human spirit, is there's nothing like this. And that impacted me. And then here we are, mates. Now you're coming to speak at my conference. So brilliant. I love it. I love it. But please share more about Mark and you know that beautiful part of you.
Oh, he did so amazing. He was working the highest in levels of intelligence, mind sciences to preserve the sanctity of free thought. And he knew from his understanding of mind brain function that without free thought, there's no free will. And without free will, no soul expression. And how that erodes our compassion and our discernment, our ability to gather the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love. And he knew ultimately that the mind control that was being forced on the population was spiritual warfare. And worse, he saw the information on our own mind brain function, our defense against mind control, our birthright information buried under national security. He couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't talk about it. He was bound by laws of sedition, but he could take action. And he decided to, how fortunately for me, lift my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. human trafficking swamp and handed me keys to my own mind. He reminded me of that birthright information that he knew about being buried under national security. He reminded me that we have this ability to heal. And just like my brain started shutting down neuron pathways in infancy from my father's sexual abuse before I could think to know it was wrong. By the time Mark rescued my daughter and me in 1988, I didn't even know good people existed in the world. I didn't know that there was any ability to be safe. I didn't have a capacity to trust. I didn't have any of that. I was just void of any ability for that. But my brain knew I was safe. My brain knew my daughter was safe, and so it started opening those neuron pathways. And as the neuron pathways started opening, the memory started leaking out of that. All those repressed traumatic memories started flashing on my mind screen. It was absolutely horrific. And Mark told me, he said, that I just needed to write it out. The pen is mightier than the sword. He said, just pick up a pen and write out what you see. Because the very act of moving a pen activates the critical analysis logic part of the brain. So it shifts emotionally incomprehensible trauma over to logic, where it's consciously seen, written out on paper in front, and all of a sudden healing occurs psychiatrically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. Every bit of it starts coming back through this one simple little brain hack that he taught me about. We can all use it, you know. Everybody can write out their fear, their trauma, write out what's immobilizing, add a solution, because if you add a solution, you force your brain to think in new ways. I had only followed orders the first 30 years of my life. I didn't even know how to formulate my own thoughts. But Mark taught me that to voice no negatives without a solution. Not only did that keep him from having to hear me complain all the time, but it forced me to think for the first time in my life. And by thinking in terms of a solution, it opened neuron pathways, more neuron pathways in my brain. And I learned to start thinking for myself. We all need that. So we need to add that solution, open those neuron pathways, and it helps lift us above the out of that dark pit of negativity and gives us a clear view forward where we can effectively take action. So Mark was teaching me all that. And in spite of all this wisdom and the goodness and the love surrounding me, love is the greatest healer. I still couldn't deal with what I knew, what I'd been forced to participate in, the fact that I couldn't protect my daughter, the horrible things that I'd been forced to do. I told Mark, I can't live with myself. And he said, you're not responsible for what you were tortured to do under mind control. Your abusers are, and they need to be held accountable for their actions. But now that you're aware, you are responsible for all your actions going forward. And I thought, that's so amazing. That's so amazing to be free of what they did to me, to be able to be who I really am and freely live that love. That was amazing to me that I could do that. And Mark freed me with just that insight and understanding. It's something we all need to understand about ourselves. It's like what so many people did with mind control masked as a virus. They're seeing the results of having had their children injected and masked up and the horrific consequences of that. And they're not responsible for that. They need to forgive themselves, understand they were programmed with trauma and a repetitive media narrative to mask up, social distance, get the injection. How many times did we hear that? That's programming. And when we understand that, we evolve with the knowledge that is our defense against it going forward. That's when we need to take responsibility for our own lives, to stop following these self-appointed, self-anointed leaders and go within, gather that strength of spirit, live our life's purpose, remember who we are and why we're here, and carry that forward out of love for each other. So it's such a wonderful opportunity. And Mark was so amazing. I was so in love with him. And he wouldn't have anything to do with me. He told me, you got to heal first. You have to know who you are in order to have something to give in a relationship. I thought, oh, who am I? How will I know who I really am? Because I couldn't learn that from outside myself. I had that the first 30 years of my life. I couldn't learn to love myself through daily affirmations and for telling myself that. It didn't work that way. It's like, how am I going to find this answer? And I went deep within myself to the base core energy of my being. And I found that energy as love. It's like, oh, I'll just live the love I am. That would be so much easier. And it was at that point that I recognized and realized that space within me, that divine alignment, that ability to connect with the infinite love was something I was very familiar with anyway, because when my body was tortured, no matter what my body went through, my spirit was always in a safe, loving space. It was as though I were looking down on what was being done. Many people report that in near-death experiences. They see themselves below, going through the trauma of a car accident or whatever. And it's because of this divine protection of our spirit. It's this divine protection of our innocence and the essence of our being that we all have. And it's like, I'm so familiar with that I stay aligned with the divine all the time. Because why wouldn't I? I mean, that's like a freeway for me. People meditate or pray or whatever to get to that space. And it's like a constant with me. So I live that love always. And it's such a beautiful a beautiful way to live. And in that, I found um, my life's purpose, who I am, why I'm here. And all of it became so clear. At that point, Mark and I did fall very much in love and had the most beautiful, divine relationship. Very individual in who we are, very different from each other in so many ways. But you know, that difference was such a beautiful thing because his point of view and mine together made a more comprehensive understanding going forward. It was very powerful for us to have our differences, acknowledge them, and embrace those differences. It's what humanity really needs to do. It's kind of like what we were talking about when people bring their piece of the puzzle to the table, we get this big picture view. When if everybody brings the same piece of the puzzle to the table, that's all we have is that piece of the puzzle. We need the big picture. We need all of it. And when we're all complete in who we are, know our truth, we can bring that forward without it having to be validated by making someone else think that's their piece of the puzzle too. You know, it doesn't work that way. We're all so vastly different, divinely perfect in who we all individually are. And that is such a beautiful message to bring forward. And ultimately, the message that Mark was able to give to me in light of the amazing truth that he knew and the difference that he chose to make in life by living out his life's purpose. In that regard, we get to all take the information forward. Remember this birthright information that he reminded me of. He couldn't release that information, but I can because it was my experience to heal with it. So I released it in PTSD, Time to Heal. It's a little tiny, thin workbook. It's not about me, it's about us all. It's easy to self apply. Everybody, everywhere needs to apply it so they can reclaim their birthright information, have that knowledge that's our defense against mind control going forward. I posted it on my website, trance-formation.com, with a pay what you can, if you can option. So everyone can have it now, regardless of income. Everyone's welcome to zero out the cost. It's just secured there that way. So feel free, zero out the cost. Get that information now and apply it because Mark gave his all. He risked his all to make a difference with that information he found buried under national security, our birthright information. And he gave it back to all of us. And he gave it back to all of us through empowering me to heal, empowering my daughter to heal with this information, empowering all of us to heal and start living the love we are. Stop following these leaders that we didn't elect, and reclaim all of that. Mark was not only my love, my hero, my best friend, everything, my soulmate, everything I ever could want, but he is a hero to us all. He's a hero to humanity for risking it all to give us back our birthright information.
Mm. That's so beautiful. I love hearing about him. And what a honey he was. What a hunky, sexy man.
Yeah, yeah. He was so handsome on top of everything else, and a gourmet chef,
Oh,
because he knew that I needed nutrition to get my brain firing again. So, it was, we didn't have any money. He was, as soon as he rescued me, they drained his bank accounts. They said that they were going to take his life savings for saving a life, their little satanic reversal. They took it all without any purpose or meaning. It didn't stop us, and Mark still was somehow able to make nutrition out of the foods that that are not expensive at all, because those are some things we can grow in our own gardens, organics, and the foods that we really need nutritionally to feed our brains. So the vastness of his information was all encompassing. His vastness of knowing the importance of having pets around us to remind us of unconditional love, to remind us of our own heightened senses and telepathic abilities, to connect with nature, to get out in the 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 earth, feel the earth beneath our feet and breathe in the air. All these things are our birthright information that we forget to indulge in because we're too busy twiddling our thumbs on our cell phones, when we really need to put all that aside and start this process of getting our brains to fire again. Pick up a pen and paper, feed our brains, get plenty of rest, get out in nature, start living the love we are, get out in our communities, dare to open our eyes and see what is happening in our own backyards to our children, and start effectively protecting them going forward, because they are targeted, and it's up to us to protect them. It's our time. It's our time to shine. It's our time to live that love. And in so many ways, Mark was such a hero to us all. And all those little reminders right there, PTSD, time to heal.
I love it. I got that book too, PTSD Time to Heal, when I was living in Costa Rica and just recovering from the death of my beautiful Jeff.
Yes.
A heart attack and died in my arms, or never awoke from a coma he was then in. But and it really helped me. Like you say, when we write, when we use pen on paper, we're accessing a different part of the brain. Whereas if we just read everything online, we're disassociated still from it.
Yes.
No emotional, physical connection to it. And that little book, your workbook, it really did help me, because you just write out and you're alone and you write it out on the blank pages, and you've got beautiful text in between to guide people. So again, I definitely recommend that workbook as well. Uh,
Yes, it does help with grief. And I reapplied it to myself when Mark passed away in 2017. And I chose then, to carry his love forward and our shared life's purpose forward. And I needed to stay strong because I knew I was vulnerable. The grief was so overwhelming. So I did pick up that pen and paper. I vented through a million poems. I wrote poetry, and I wrote out so many beautiful miracles that happened, and I kept my shoulders back and my head up, and it helped. And I'm so glad that it was helpful for you too in losing your soulmate, so that you could carry that love forward too.
I know, I know. We should probably bring this, because I want to end on the high. You've just raised it so high, and I have so many other questions. Maybe next week we can play again together,
Yeah.
share obviously some of the real because I've mentioned to people before, having learned from you, because you were actually there in the White House and the Pentagon, that you were then moved around using Wizard of Oz terminology, and I would love for us to go into some of those areas, because they're
Yes.
unbelievable
Mhm.
that they would say a line and you would go on to the next person, and it was Wizard of Oz and follow the yellow brick road, and you think that can't be true. That it's true, guys. So we'll visit that and those areas next time we come together. And gosh, I love you so much, so deeply. Just your frequency as well. There's a reverence in you that I feel, that I'm always so close to tears for so many reasons. There's a part of me that can't bear what you've had to endure, and little Kelly as well. And then there's a part that's just so in utter amazement and astonishment at this woman who was of this bright, beautiful, unconditionally loving light today, and teaching as you do. You're teaching and you're sharing, and you're just a magnificent person, Cathy O'Brien.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. It's just keep living the love I am. And it's so amazing that I survived what I did and that I'm here today. And as long as I'm here, I'm going to keep living my purpose because I feel so divinely protected and have powerful
Mm.
truth to share so that everyone can know the joy of living love and life's purpose. It's such a beautiful way to live.
It's such a beautiful way to live, most definitely. So let me bring you back up here. Um, Tell us again the name of your website, and it's preferable if people go to your website to get your books as opposed to Amazon or anywhere else, because it's obviously more helpful to you. So tell us again. I'll put it underneath the broadcast too, but some people never look underneath the video, they just,
Yeah.
so what is your website?
Yes, my website is trance-formation.com, TRANCE hyphen formation.com. PTSD Time to Heal is secured there. All my books are secured there. I've got autographed copies available again for the first time in quite a while. I'm excited about that. There are links to my Amazon Kindles and the Audibles because I read all the books myself to preserve the integrity of information. And I encourage everyone to always go to the source for information because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Not only is truth censored, it's diluted, and there's so many free ebooks out there of my testimony for Congress, and it's been totally altered to promote the globalist agenda. So be careful. Go to the source for information, and the links that I have on my website are secure. And also, there's a lot of powerful information there on how the MK Ultra applies to today, what we can do about it, what's being done for the children. A lot of interviews and podcasts and a good deal of information. Plus, people can get hold of me through my website, and I always respond. Takes a while sometimes, but I always respond. So, trance-formation.com.
Beautiful. And again, people, this is what the book looks like. Transformation of America. And Cathy O'Brien, it's spelt with an E in the O'Brien bit. See? Cathy O'Brien. And again, it is not an easy read, but I think it's one of the most important books ever written to help people understand the matrix, the monsters, and the situation that we've all been born into, and then it makes it easier for a soul to say, I was wrong and that's okay. Now I know, because there's a problem people have sometimes with their ego. They're like, no, I can't believe that about this person. And it's like, well, I used to believe the same thing about that person. I thought they were good too until I realized that they're not. And it's okay to be wrong. Just get over the ego and free yourself then to do the healing. So beautiful. Well, Cathy, we'll come back soon together and we'll give more of the information of what you went through. And thank you so much, my love. And
Thank you.
thank you, darling. And to you guys out there, we hope to see you at the next Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection. Cathy will be there. Cathy O'Brien's coming. She's a speaker. Woohoo! Oh, wait, so excited. I'm so excited. And also, Max Lowen is coming, and Max Lowen is also a friend of ours, a beautiful American girl born into a high elite satanic bloodline family, and in the summer holidays was trafficked underneath the Vatican. She saw the throne to Lucifer there. She saw children unalived there. She speaks about it and will speak about it at GISIC, Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection. And also, those of you that come to my channel, you'll know Cathy O'Brien, Max Lowen, Gloria Masters in New Zealand, and you'll know Rachel Vaughan. Rachel Vaughan is the Australian, again, born into a Masonic satanic family. Her dad is responsible with other people for the unaliving of 3 children called The Beaumont Children. It's one of the biggest stories in America, unsolved, just like kids going missing at Disney, for example, because they're taken underground and done away with or moved on, trafficked. And Rachel Vaughan will actually be at GISIC, but not speaking on stage. There isn't a single speaker slot left. But at least Rachel Vaughan will be there, guys. And she's tall, beautiful, redhead, Australian. You'll get to meet her too. So it's just so lovely that I've got three of you from those countries all together at the same time, Cathy. It's just so magnificent. And I'm so happy that people will get to meet you all too. So again, to you guys out there watching, I send you love as always from my heart to yours. My name is Danny Henderson. I love you buggers, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Cathy.